I would love Semenyo. Kirkus feels like this year's McAllister in the sense that it's the worst kept secret that we're getting him. Maybe we won't, but
I think there's one that feels more like this year's McAllister. But anyway, carry on.
Okay. So Kirkus, Huijsen is Spanish. Just made his debut for the Spanish national team. So there's a lot of Real Madrid vibes around him. But then again, is it a bit of a Lenny Yoro one? Does he get a game for Real Madrid? Does he get a game for Liverpool? What do you think about all these Bournemouth lads? You've got 3 to talk about.
I mean, Real Madrid have, in fairness, been playing a youth product from their B team at centre-back for the entire season. He's done very well, but ultimately, I think they can still argue that they're
just giving him a big deal.
They do have room for centre-back.
They do have room for a centre-back.
They still do have room. Rudiger is getting no younger either, really, is he? I think he's probably... He must be 30 minimum now, Rudiger. So
are we going to go hard for the Arsenal lad?
Saliba? Maybe.
There's rumours.
There's rumours of it, but you don't know what they're going to do. And ultimately, a fella who plays for Spain, Real Madrid have weirdly not got many players in the Spain squad. So there is a sort of thing where maybe they're looking at it going, we probably need to start getting more sort of Spanish players. I know that sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but I think the last tournament, I don't think Real Madrid had a single man in the squad bar maybe Carvajal, and I think Carvajal is not far off.
No, he had that bad injury this season.
So there is a thing where they're probably looking at. I know he's not properly Spanish because he was born in Amsterdam. I think
he's going out of his way to be properly Spanish, though.
It is quite funny how much he's into it. So maybe he is like. I think it would make a lot of sense for them, but ultimately it makes a lot of sense.
He's a bit Dutch, isn't he? Yeah,
he's basically Dutch. He's from Holland.
Our manager's Dutch. The only thing is, I think, where does he get his minutes for Liverpool? He's on
exactly. This is the thing.
He's on a fast climb. So,
but he's 19. What I will point out is that he doesn't actually get more than 2 starts for Bournemouth before December this year. Yeah. He's 19 years old, so the idea of starting again at that sort of position, whether it's at Liverpool or Real Madrid, and saying, well, I'll wait, I'll get my chance, I'll play some League Cup, Champions League game here and there against the pot 4 team. But as and when someone gets an injury, I'll be in and you won't get me out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's done at Bournemouth, and I think that's what he'd do, at his next club. I think he'd have a real sense of confidence around that. He's young enough to do that.
No, he's just played
but I think why I think he could be interesting for us is I think you could see him being able to play both sides.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think he could be really interesting for us. So I think he will come in as a genuine sort of... He can play some games, because I think we'll need to have a bit of a plan to look after Virgil a teeny little bit more. And also it's in your interests to have a look at what he looks like next to Konate, presuming Konate signs a new deal. It becomes in Liverpool's interest to begin that and have a look at that and go on that journey a little bit in this, where we find ourselves with one eye on what the future's going to hold. I think he's great. There's 2 things that concern me. They're sort of interlinked. One is that full stop anyway, we just don't get him. The other one is, what Liverpool don't want to do is go through the hard yards of 4 years with this lad to turn him into an elite centre-half to replace Van Dijk, only for us to get a year and a half into that process and him say, right, that's great, and I want to go and sign for Real Madrid or Barcelona, whichever one it might be. And
that was why I wasn't really interested in Yoro in any way, shape or form.
Because you feel it's the same trajectory.
Isn't that a concern with any great young player you get?
I think it is to a point, but there's some people where it's more obvious than others, and it feels like it's more obvious with him.
But also I'm more concerned with it at centre-back. So I'm fine with Luis Diaz. Like the idea that Luis Diaz at some point wants to go and play in Spain, and for Real or Barca, let's just say for him it seems like it's more Barca. But I'm fine with that. A, the age that you sign him at, but also B, the nature of the position. You sort of turn young, exciting wingers around at no time at all. They're fun to buy. You want to talk about Semenyo in a minute. Just sort of know what I mean.
Yeah, they're not great for 9 years.
Whereas I think that whatever you're doing next at centre half, you want to almost feel like, right, we're building this.
It's a foundational signing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's different. So I feel as though this is one of those things that's different with attackers and defenders, different with centre backs. And that's what concerns me is Liverpool. It happened to United with PK. You put a lot of hard yards in and time and investment into this. You can even argue in a way it happened with Leeds and Rio Ferdinand. You take the risk, you go through the development process, and then all of a sudden someone turns around and goes, nah, don't worry about that then, I'm off now. You've been my finishing school and I'm going to go and be the real deal somewhere else. And that's what would really concern me about the Huijsen signing more than anything else. And in being so desperate to be a Spanish international and making those noises becomes a part of that. And that's my one big downer on him. Apart from that, I think he's got everything that you need. There'll be other centre-backs bouncing around the place that you can look at who can offer that as well. it may well be that Liverpool. There's two ways to deal with Van Dijk. Effectively, at some point, stopping playing for Liverpool, which I hope is in at least 2 years' time. But there's two ways to deal with it. One is that you either do the growth thing, or at the moment when that's going to happen, you just go and buy the best one you possibly can. I would argue you can do both, and you should try and do both. In that, if the growth thing hasn't happened for whatever reason, then it's fine. You break glass and you put the money down at the moment where you go and get the best one. And if that best one's 27 at that moment, that's fine. If you don't fancy your 21, 22-year-old. So I think it's important Liverpool have a plan for that. And if it's Huijsen and we just roll with the punches, then I'm all in. I think he's great. I think he's really, really impressive. Semenyo, I think, is dead interesting. And the reason why I think Semenyo is dead interesting, I'm annoyed he didn't play centre-forward more for Bournemouth when they had the centre-forward crisis and they kept him in wide areas, because I sort of think Liverpool might end up buying a winger and playing him centre-forward off the back of a couple of things. One is what they've done with Diaz. Number two, the ongoing nature of Salah, and again, succession planning Salah to an extent. Because if you're paying all the money to keep Salah, the attack and focus remains Salah. It doesn't become the number 9. Number 3, what I think you want someone who can drop in and do midfield stuff, but you want someone who can turn and spin and go the other way and who's got tons of pace. Again, if you've got Salah, that becomes a live thing as well. And the other thing is there just aren't loads and loads of really good number 9s around, so you might as well say, well, we'll go into a compromised position for a year or two and really fancy ourselves. But when Bournemouth had the injury crisis, they went with Uatra up top. They didn't go with Semenyo. Underperformed his XG this season, Rob. Just as a little note for you. Yep, 7 goals off 8.22. Last season he overperformed it. 8 goals off 5.91. So that just sort of feels like that's the vagaries of
overperforming if it wasn't for Alisson Becker, though, wouldn't he?
Well, yeah, in there as well. But he's, I like him, but I might like him as I say. I wonder whether or not the way Liverpool will solve what they want to do up front. You look at, for instance, what we've just gone up against with Paris Saint-Germain. They haven't got a number 9. They've got 3 lads who can play all the way along the 3.
Yeah.
And they rotate and they move. You can all drop into midfield and do a couple of bits. They're all creative. They're all ball carriers and they're all finishers. And I wonder whether or not, could be completely wrong, but I wonder whether or not part of what Liverpool might end up doing this summer is buying someone who we think is a winger, and then all the way through pre-season he's just playing number 9.